Hey, David, it's 52 degrees here in Phoenix, Mesa. Um, I'm going to do a podcast. There's going to be some serious topics in this one, stuff that matters, but not right away. I got some food, I'm going to eat the food, but for people only interested in the more serious stuff, you can skip ahead to when I take this poncho off. It'll be like a visual cue for you when you're clicking forward. But I'm not normally interested in providing any kind of guided tour for what my content is going to be, but there are some important issues in this that came up today. Try to figure out like a format kind of thing if I'm going to do this with any regularity. But I don't know if I am or not, but it's kind of fun. So I got a calzone from DP's. I'm on a much better diet than I was. These are actually not, I mean, certainly not going to make an argument for good food, but the calorie count is pretty low, and the ingredients they use are good. Now, this is the thing that's really bad for me, the soda, and a fairly large one. But I'm still way down from where I was. And going cold turkey on soda for me has been the problem. I'll cut it out. It's another thing I don't want to make an excuse for, but rather offer an explanation, which is simply that my life is headed in a good direction. I'm working on the physical stuff, but there's only so much you can do so quickly. Burning the weight, the fat, isn't hard when you get the totally right diet, and I'm headed in that direction. And so it's not a motivation issue, it's just my current physical environment dictates that I need certain comforts, in part because I'm sitting in the most uncomfortable chair in the world that doesn't have something actually poking me or bugs in it, or burned in a fire. So anyway, like I say, I'll get to some more serious stuff later when I take off the poncho. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do after the serious stuff. I don't know if this will be long or not. We'll just see how things go. And I'm not going to record eating. I'm just going to eat, so I'll be back in a minute. I could have just recorded this after, but that's not how I did things. Here's the calzone. It's from DP Dough. They're huge too, and pretty cheap. This is like $10. Alright, so I'm just going to get into the stuff that matters first and then just mess around after. So the idea that came up today was America as a pointillist empire, and the connection between Confederates, Nazis, and Trumps, and then Stallone, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and water. If you're wondering why those things are connected, they just are. I have a few notes, but it's just those words that I just read. And it's not that I should have prepared better, because it's just not that. It's just hard to combine all those ideas. So we're hard to know where to start. I guess start with water. Water is basic and it's essential. You know that. And that's the root of political religion, religion is politics, is our holy group needs this water. Now, that doesn't speak for or against the truth, the underlying truth of any religion. So just because it was created or politicized for water access in the Middle East, and by this I mean sort of the big three in the West, so Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, they were all founded for to get people the water, and there's because it was politicized, the holy books were written and edited by people to justify certain things. In particular, in the good book in the Bible, it's an Old Testament thing. I think I have to look. I don't remember everything about the Bible, but it's the curse of Ham, the Hamitic myth, is what historians call it. And the idea is that God cursed some guy for seeing his dad naked or something stupid, and turned him black, and so the like really black. And the idea is that the color of your skin matters, and the darker you are, the less of a human you are. Now, coincidentally, the darker the skin colors, coincidentally, the darker the skin color, the less water there is generally. Not always, but in a lot of cases. The places with the least water are the darkest. So North Africa at the moment, Western Sahara, look at Morocco, Mali, Mauritania, any of those Sahara Desert, anything touching the Sahara. And then West Africa, same basic situation because of militant Islam dating back to around the time of Mansa Musa. So we're not talking about something that's been going on since, we're talking about something that's been going on since well before there was an America, which is part of what makes America a great nation. Not saying that to be patronizing in any way, it is. So we'll get to that later. So the way the world operates, reality, the real sphere, whatever, is basically because of politics, money, resources, necessities that aren't necessary anymore, largely. So even if what happened was necessary to get where we are, we're at a time and a place where we can change the way we work. So with that, we need to dismantle ideas of imperialism. We don't need a mother or father country. People are just people, and no country at this point is better than any other or worse than any other. There are just people in better or worse situations. So it's really pretty simple. It's more of a matter of logistics. One of my favorite examples is that in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, they produce enough cotton for the entire world, but we still grow it here in Arizona, which wastes an absurd amount of water for shitty cotton. No offense to the farmers, they do work very hard. But we don't need that cotton. And before you're like, well, they want to grow cotton. Nobody wants to do something stupid. Like, they want to get coal. Do they want to mine coal? I don't think they want to mine coal. So, like, chill out with the coal. Shit we don't need anymore. Like, it's really not complicated. Read Martin Molosi if you haven't, if you're in any position that matters dealing with anything. a sanitary city and a precious commodity. You can read other books about, read those books, and then read other books too. So where we are now with imperialism, well, all right, let's go back a step. There's just so much history here. I mean, I could tie a complete narrative from the beginning of the colonial period to now, but that would, I think it's better to look, well, all right, let's just start with colonialism. And so Europe was basically monarchies. This is from a Western perspective. So Europe is filled with monarchies. There's trade coming in from the East, Silk Road, the Middle East, and China. China at that time, before colonialism, was basically, if not, was actually the most powerful nation in the world. Most stuff came from China to Europe. Africa was kind of doing their own thing, and wasn't nearly as populated as it is now, or maybe it was. We kind of don't really know. I'm sure some people have a better idea than I do, and I do know areas that were populated, but a lot of the heart of Africa, I mean, it's complicated, but the point is they were kind of on their own. So it's mostly Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, as the story goes, in the West. Correct me where I'm wrong if you're a scholar from another part of the world. Now, they were generally peaceful. The Arabs were generally peaceful. Muhammad did a good job, an excellent job as a prophet for God. I do believe in God, and if you want to debate that, that's fine, but this isn't a debate. And you don't have to believe in God, so don't worry and don't make anybody else do anything they don't want to do. People will come to God or find God when they're in a comfortable and good place. So you don't need to force that on people, and them not knowing about God won't not save them. So, don't seek out people to tell them about God. Just leave people alone. I assure you, that's what God would want. I'm not a prophet, but that is what he would want. As a man of reason and logic, who understands the world and environment around him, who understands literature and reading comprehension, who studied everything, who's read every book, listened to everything, talked to everybody. So, and I'm still not even saying take my word for it. Go do your research, and you'll come to the same conclusions. Now, unless you're using information, and that's why this is the Western picture. So I'm not saying it's objectively true. I'm just saying this is the picture as the story goes in the West. So there certainly could be gaps in this knowledge. I wasn't alive at the time of colonialism, except that I am still alive in the era of imperialism, which we'll get to. Now, colonialism, so Europe decides that they need more Lebensraum well before World War II. Now, Europe at the time wasn't in the nations, but their counties were, think of it like that. A county was kind of your country, but nobody had any sense of nationalism, really. They just had a feudal lord, a local lord, and the aristocrats played their they kind of had their own life. But times were just different then, and movies portray it very, very wrongly. In a lot of cases, it's deliberate to reinforce that capitalism is good. And I'm not saying capitalism isn't good, but unrestricted capitalism isn't good. And so I need to clear my head. So, yeah, anyway, it wasn't the way you imagine it or have seen it through Hollywood. Some of the stories are true, maybe, but it really doesn't matter. We don't have good history before the 20th century. We don't have good history today because the academy sucks, but that's a topic for a different day. And it doesn't mean don't go to school and don't have school. Go to school. College is good. Everybody should go to college, even if they don't learn anything. They learn stuff. College is important, even for ditch diggers. The world needs ditch diggers too. Fine, but they can go to college because when they do, the world will need less ditch diggers, and we have plenty of ditches. So does the world need ditch diggers? Not anymore, and that's kind of my point. To get to where we are, some of what happened was necessary, not the violence, but some of the use, or the particular use of resources. Now, we also need to figure out how to reallocate the resources we have, the biggest part of which is to avoid the Apple model of, it predates Apple, but they really mastered it, of planned obsolescence. They might have actually coined that phrase, I don't know. But I definitely won't ever buy an Apple product if I can avoid it. Now maybe if they change, it's not, and again, it's not, even that company, it's not generally bad actors, but that company has had bad actors. I think Wozniak is fine. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been in the tech field, and the writing that I've seen from people who I do respect indicates that Wozniak is fine. It was Steve Jobs that was the asshole. I don't necessarily know the truth exactly, but I have known people who worked for Apple. I've worked for a number of massive tech companies. So it's not an uneducated opinion, though it is an opinion because I never did meet them. I never wanted to meet them. So colonialism sort of, I mean, it changed the outlook of the world. So there's these different counties, but there are still kings and queens who rule larger areas. Spain doesn't like the Muslims because there's a bunch of wars with the Andalusians in southern Spain, and then even Portugal is a different culture group. The people there they aren't the same as the Spanish. They come from different roots. They're basically the same. I mean, they're not the same, but like it's a peninsula. Like, calm down. It'd be like me saying people from Texas aren't the same as me. And they are. Cowboys. So the Italian boat people go to they go everywhere in Europe. Eventually the Spanish and the Portuguese send out the Castilians and the Portuguese send out some people, got some blessings from the Pope. They wanted to cut out the Middle Eastern trade and go to Asia because the Arab middlemen were pretty hard. Like, you're not going to fight through the Middle East, but the weak men of the East is the way the Asians were viewed. So they're like, if we can find it, we can just go take their stuff. And then they're like, oh hey, there's in Africa, like there's a whole huge thing here, so let's take this stuff too. So they colonized the world. Spain, Portugal, and France, and Britain came in later. Netherlands came in before Britain and France. Venice Venice was not part of Italy, and they colonized some of Ottoman territory. So it was basically Christians gone wild. And the excuse they used, the casus belli, the legal cause for war was generally religion. So even then there was some basic world order, and you couldn't just go to war without everybody saying, well, you can't just go to war. So there was always like a legal cause for war. I think that's a Western thing, but I'm not entirely sure. In the East, they have a thing called the Mandate of Heaven. So that's so they take their religion seriously. So that's where we get to Stallone. And the Rambo movies, which I've never seen, are him or deal with him being in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, or Laos, or somewhere in that area, or Burma maybe, Myanmar now, but Burma. I don't know, one of those countries where they had something called an anti-Christian edict. So because all these missionaries had come in, capitalists had come in under the guise of missionaries. And there were missionaries there too, so there's always true believers who are easily swayed and can swing an axe. So they, and that's the only good Orwell book is Burmese Days. You can check that one out. It's about this, a little bit pre this, but so anyway, that takes us to. Stallone is a fallout from Vietnam, so it gets to the point where there's this dichotomy between different world religion, separation of different world religions, so there's alliances formed based on who doesn't like what religion, which definitely had some more weight than you may or may not realize. Atheists oversell it, religious people undersell it. So your opinion on it is probably wrong. It was a factor. The true belief system was a factor, both violently and non-violently. And now this even gets into the roots of Protestantism. Martin Luther being like, we can't do this. And the Pope was the one who was giving these different nations blessings. So Portugal was allowed to go east, Spain was allowed to go west. So that was how it started. That was what the Pope said was okay, because they were using Italian sailors. Henry the Navigator is someone worth looking up. He's Portuguese, but other than him, it's all the big names you know are Italian. And so now when the British came in to colonize the U.S., so the Spanish colonized the southern U.S. and South America, so the British came further north. And they the Spanish idea was more heavily surrounded by religion because they were supported by the Pope. but it was a reformed England who did most of, if not all of their colonization. So, but that's anti-disestablishmentarianism. So there's this whole resistance to, no, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, but no, now this is what our religion says we should do. And the way the English justified it was based on development. So if they came and saw that something, if land had been developed, then it was okay for natives. If it was undeveloped, then the natives weren't really using it anyway. They didn't own it because it wasn't developed. So they brought in a foreign system of ownership and forced it on the natives, killed millions of natives, billions if you count like opportunity cost, but I don't count opportunity cost because then you're talking about theoretical people and revisionist history is generally stupid. So they killed hundreds of thousands, millions of people. I don't know the exact number. Historians estimate it in the millions that they actually killed, not opportunity cost killed. And yeah, I mean, certainly it matters, but it doesn't matter now. Like, there's nothing that can be done about the past, and those people aren't around to punish. So it's just something that is bad, but there's nothing that can be done about it. It's not like the solution is to exterminate the other group and replace them with your group. It's just, yeah, the past sucks. That's not the way I would have done it. I don't know. So, then we get Star Wars and Star Trek. Star Wars is the story of Nazis in space. Star Trek is what if communism worked. Now, the way communism has been implemented isn't good. It's not Marxist. It's different, and it's just power. So Russia was Tsarist, and it's the form of, and then there were some revolutions by some assholes, and then a different group of assholes, and then they went back to basically the Tsarist Russia without the religious influence, so they went overboard on getting rid of their religion. I don't know. I mean, there's just so many different areas and different stories, so it's hard to talk about pick a thread and go down it. Indiana Jones is pretty interesting here too, because it deals with the mystical elements of religion, which, I mean, I can't speak to the underlying truth of that. I don't think, I mean, I know with great certainty that physical objects don't matter. Like, we don't need to look for a holy grail, though feel free to look for a holy grail if you're not hurting anything to do it. We also don't need to respect things like tombs. Like, that it just doesn't matter. Now, if there are people alive and living in there who believe in a thing, leave them alone. Like, I'm not saying go start grave robbing, but I'm also saying grave robbing doesn't matter. So, like, if there's something out there that people don't care about, like Stonehenge, you can knock down those stones. But if there's something, like, if there's people like Uluru or the fucking big red rock in Australia, it's grinding down or whatever because people want to fucking walk on it, and there's people who live there that are like, that rock is our god. Like, leave that rock alone. There's other rocks. Yeah, all right. I'm gonna end this one here. There's a lot more that okay. Well, let me talk about Confederates, Nazis, and Trump real quick. That was a thing. I think Quali posted on his Instagram. I think it was Quali. So the connection between Confederates, Nazis, and Trump supporters. So that it basically goes back to the Hamitic myth, but it's worth spelling out because the comparison is relevant to moderate current discourse. Like, it matters right now. So Confederates are people from the South who came from Catholics and Baptists who reinforce a literal interpretation of a Bible that wasn't written literally. Even the Quran, sorry to say, is not unadulterated Word of God. It's not because God is fallible. It's not because Muhammad is fallible. It's because people exerted control and influence over it who misappropriated power. It's their fault, the individual people. It's not Muhammad. It's not God. Not Allah. It's people. And a lot of it is incompetence, not malice. So there are people, all these people in the South who legitimately think that race matters in the opposite of the way Cornel West described it. It's like, yes, they're here for us, to serve us. What's your, like, and they say it straight-faced, like they would believe that. And you can say, well, they should know different, but it's their pastor telling them. Now, if you're a kid from Boston, you know what that's like. So it's you need to go easy on these people because they don't know better, and that's the divide that needs to be healed. Is people who have been taught wrong need to be corrected by people who know and understand things like propaganda, things like things like power, Foucault, Bentham. There's the John Locke. Read about everybody they talk about in Lost. Kierkegaard's my favorite. I don't think they have him in Lost, but anyway. So what Nazis are a little bit different. They use religion in the same, religion in a similar way. The Hamitic myth, there's Hasidic, not Hasidic, I mean there are, that's not what I mean though. I meant Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews, and I forget which is which, but one of them's the really dark-skinned ones, one of them's the light-skinned ones. So it was obviously the case that the dark-skinned ones were bad because they were dark-skinned, so they were the descendants of Ham. So they were already bad guys. And now to these Europeans, not to me. There were the lighter-skinned Europeans to this point hadn't really been. I mean, they've been persecuted, but they just got kind of ping-ponged around Europe and North Africa, and then Hitler's like, let's just get rid of them, which is supremely fucked up. And it was to get this living space and this idea that Germany was the master race, Germany was great, and if you look at their alliances, you can see that it's really not about skin color. I mean, they were allied with the Japanese, who are in no way Aryan. They were allied with Iran, but Iran is Aryan, so again, this is an area that's huge. So World War II is similar to the Confederacy in that it's based on the Hamitic myth and the different Jewish tribes, with Hitler saying, no, they're all Jews. They're all cursed. And that's kind of, again, where mysticism comes in, the idea of curses. So I mean, personally, there's something to the mysticism, but it's not stuff like curses. It's not worth explaining, but there's a relationship with God that you can feel through, and it's not just through nature. That's something that's always bothered me, is that the idea that God only exists in nature, but everything is natural. That's something I hated about history, is you can't describe anything as natural, but everything is natural. If you want to say nothing is, then you can also say everything is, because when they say natural, they mean it's not the way it originally was, I guess, but I take it to mean of nature, and everything is of nature. It's not like my computer isn't made of stuff from nature. So unless you're positing aliens, everything is natural. It doesn't mean everything is good. But the Willy Wonka quote, if God wanted us to walk, he didn't. If God wanted us to walk, he wouldn't have invented roller skates. It checks out. Like, God made roller skates. if that helps you. Now, Trump supporters, I mean, the connection there shouldn't be hard, but give me a second to try to think of how people wouldn't understand it. I mean, aside from the cult of personality and just the idea of Trump and wealth. So, I mean, one connection is the idea of Lebensraum. So the Germans expanded because they wanted more space for Germans. Like, they're like, we can take this Polish land too because they're, well, they were Catholics, so that was okay. It was cleanse the heretics, I guess. And that's sort of why the rest of Europe didn't really care about them invading Poland, because there was no real Catholic support at the time. Germany was the Holy Roman Empire of German nations, but most were Protestant. So, and like they still had the Pope in Rome, which is why North and South Italy don't really get along. That plus the whole South Italy is Moorish in descent, and the Europeans are and they that's a joke for not sure. So trying to think. Yeah, so the problem was when the Nazis marched into Belgium, and Protestants were like, hey, you're attacking Protestants now, so we're going to go to war with you. Now, the Trump thing builds on that, so there's this idea of nationalism, and it's not religious, so any religious pretense, that there was religious pretense for the Nazis, there is no religious pretense for Trump. What Trump did is not in line with any biblical teaching. What Hitler did was in line with historical biblical teaching. Now, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's right, but it is in line with the way religion is taught. Not what religion is, but the way it was taught. We're at a point where there's no excuse, so people who teach religion need to go do their homework if they haven't. And I mean that for every religion, Jewish, Israeli, Israel, Palestine, for not just the Christians, Protestants, Baptists, Catholics, Orthodox, what a fox. Taoists, Tangrists, animists, fetishists, Zoroastrianists, I don't know, everything. The Hindus, pantheon worshippers, followers. The end of the day, it's all about being good to each other, helping each other, building. It's not about and yes, destroying what is bad. So build or destroy, but only destroy things that are bad, to replace it with something good. And don't use violence, because violence is not okay within any holy context. Even if you look at those, like the Hindu religions or the pantheon religions where the gods were violent, it doesn't excuse human violence. So, like, even if you believe in one of those pantheons, so if you're Greek or Norwegian and you're pagan, those religions are still rooted in love, not hatred and violence. If you want to, not every religion, but every religion that's built on good faith, meaning not to exploit a situation. So, anyway, I guess that's going to be it for this one. I'm just going to cut it off here, because it's no reason to throw in a bunch of stupid shit in this one. Next one will be stupid shit probably, unless somebody gives me something else good to talk about. Alright. Bug off.